we are literally accelerating all of the potential within our own spiritual being. We're literally accelerating our vibration. And again, just as a reminder, the vibration that people speak about when they go into the out-of-body travel state is related to the difference in the frequency of the physical body and the spiritual body. And so as we literally alter the way we think in order to pursue this towards God's will alone, we're actually accelerating our own vibration. We're creating a vibrational raising that we may not yet actually feel or even have a conscious participation in, but it's happening because we are altering the thrust of our view, where our eyes are looking. It changes everything. And in doing this, we are humbling ourselves, recognizing, yes, we are parts of creation, but recognizing that we don't seek out of body experiences to exalt ourselves or to make ourselves somehow feel greater than or better than other humanity. We do so to humble ourselves in the vast view of what creation really is. This becomes so important in recognizing that our humility is the necessary seed which will bear the fruit of actual realization. So in some circles, there can be a tendency to get into spiritual pride or look at how much progress I've made. In the true spiritual progress, we want to realize and look for the more humble you become, the more we see that there is genuine progress being made. Because anyone who tries to stand before the great will of God, they will be put into that perspective. And rather than being something that demeans or diminishes our human status, it ennobles it. And so this humility is an ennobling character that comes from that recognition that the will of God is what we must seek if we wish to make true progress. And then it's going to be so important that the soul approaches the path with serious ardor and deep respect. So it's not a parlor game. It's not just, this is entertaining. This is truly the golden key that can open up the stairway to heaven, the golden key that opens up the secrets and mysteries of the soul and of your own personal soul to yourself, that actually accelerates progress within you in such a way that we have to look at it with this ardor and deep respect. And this is really an important point for so many of us, because especially in our world today, we have this just general idea of, really quick, getting what we want quickly, wanting that quick verification of anything that we might do. We need to be in a state of anticipating the need for mystical training in discernment. What does that mean? A couple of things. We're going to make some suggestions as we continue involving, some of the spiritual practices you'll do daily, including spiritual reading. And we do go through this training in discernment that comes from spiritual reading, reading about mystical theology, which is literally the science of the soul, uncovering our own defects. But there is also the mystical training we receive in the out-of-body travel state, where we are taught about energetic law, eternal truth, all of the things we learn about good, evil, ignorance, everything from heavens through the purgatories and the hells. So we learn discernment mystically. We encourage that learning through engaging on the ground, and that includes the study. So there is a twofold process there that we want to make clear. But right now we're focusing on this understanding there will be a need for this mystical training in discernment, and it will take time. It will require patience. It will require discipline, and it will come in small steps. We don't expect to have one experience that completely transforms us. We can have an experience that completely changes everything we think, do, or feel. But that's still not the kind of transformation I'm talking about, which will come from these constant ascents into the heavens and bringing that which is from heaven down into the below. And that's the need, the mystical training that will continue, the discipline and cultivation practices that will occur in the out-of-body travel state. So we anticipate that need. We prepare ourselves ahead of time that this is not going to be some type of quick fix. Even if you're one of those people who's very lucky, who is able to get out of their body on the first try, that's still just the beginning. And so we want to anticipate that we will need mystical training, extensive mystical training in discernment. Discernment is a huge and very important part of the out-of-body travel experience. And as an extension of that, we place within ourselves the idea that we are prepared to wait upon the Lord, because only God decides when we are ready and when we are going to have the experiences that we have. So we prepare to be patient in waiting upon the Lord, and to be patient with our own progress, which will be different for every single one of us. And along with this, understanding that the purpose of this is for this deeper evolution of the soul, this karmic purification, this deeper purification into all of these different phases of development. And finally, we want to anticipate what are called dry periods, known in mystical theology as periods when people feel like God has withdrawn from them, but that's only the way they feel. It's not necessarily what's actually occurring. But these are normal parts of the out-of-body travel experience and mysticism itself, which means that you may have a flurry of experiences and then suddenly nothing. That's a dry period, and I want you to prepare to anticipate those and not look upon those as being a sign of something having gone wrong. I want you to understand that those dry periods are a necessary part of this evolutionary path that you will be taking in out-of-body travel. And finally, cultivating service. And so the idea of understanding that everything that we will seek out, we will be seeking it out for the benefit of our own soul, but for the benefit of all life. And as we do this, we are literally energizing that acceleration. And so that's very important. So I'd like you to pay attention to how you're feeling right now. And as we're going to move into some of these other areas, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about what we're going to move into. I'd like you to pay attention to your breathing in and breathing out. We're going to be touching on the purification path itself. We're going to be going into the practices that are involved in out-of-body travel. Then we're going to be going right into the interim glimpses, how we prepare to leave our bodies, the blocks and fears that people can expect, and the two biggest fears that people report. Also, then we will move right into the mechanics. And after that, we're going to go more into some of the teachings on energetic law, energetic truth, and some of the basic understandings in the mystical spheres that will serve you well as later we'll touch into some of the sacred texts that teach of these practices as well. So again, pay attention to how you're feeling. What I'm using right now, and I encourage all of you to use these books, not only while you're taking the class, but also before, during, after. The one I'm utilizing for the beginning section is Astral Projection Made Easy, which is kind of like almost a devotional. So you can use this just to remind yourself of all of these things that I'm laying out for you, because they will be laid out for you very simply so that you can almost eventually memorize, or at least have a really good sense of these practices and processes in your mind. And then when you're ready through that, you're going to want to move on to the other ones that we're going to be moving into. Just Come to Wisdom's Door, How to Have an Out-of-Body Experience, Out-of-Body Travel and Mysticism, a primer on the basics of out-of-body experiences and energetic law and out-of-body travel and mysticism, and out-of-body experiences, what you need to know, which actually goes into those ancient sacred texts.
Marilynn,
But just, yeah.
Oh, if I may, sorry.
Of course.
There's a long silence.
Of course.
I don't know if I can handle that long silence. I feel so relaxed and very receptive state. You just mentioned astral projections made easy. Now,
Yes.
there's a delineation between astral projections and out-of-body experiences. I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit. And then also, I'm curious why you chose that title for that book. And if you could just say a little something about that book, because that's one that I don't have yet.
Oh, well, it is, as with all the titles that I have for my books, I received it in a mystical experience. And so every title that I have has been given to me specifically. I never create titles of my own accord. And so I'm very blessed and lucky in that way, because it would be hard. But there is a difference between astral travel and out-of-body travel. Astral travel is referring to the astral realm, which would be the fourth dimensional overlay of the third dimension. Out-of-body travel can refer to any number of realms, whether it's in the higher spheres, lower spheres, or intermediate spheres, and on the astral plane. So when you use the term out-of-body travel, it's a more inclusive term. And, you know, I think part of the reason why Astral Projection Made Easy was called that is because when we start, we are projecting into the astral plane. And that's why then, as you move through this process, and you can always use this because this book is kind of devotionalist, you know, you can literally, I can use this book. Oh, I need to remember to do this. You know what I mean? This book was given to me in the mystical state, as were all the others. And so it's a very helpful just laying out and giving you things to go to.
Okay.
But once you pass through the astral plane, then you're going to want to also then have some of more of the information that we're going to cover later, which goes into these other books as well, which is going to give you some foundational knowledge into what to expect in the spiritual body, in the out-of-body travel state, the things you're going to run into, the things you'll experience, and how to travel through that. And so we're going to move into purification, which you're going to see here is going to encompass the rest of this process that we'll cover through Astral Projection Made Easy. And, you know, in the Mysteries of the Redemption, we talk about the threefold process, the purification, discrimination, and discipline. And those other paths will be very relevant in the out-of-body travel experience. But in the beginning stages, we are focusing primarily on purification. And so that's where we're at here. And so, again, we want to now kind of ride into this very calm, very peaceful place. And as we're talking about purification, we talk about quite a few things. We talk about the importance of prayerful fervor. And, you know, the type of prayer that I often recommend to people, people can do the prescribed prayers of their own particular faith. But when we're going into this particular kind of prayerful fervor, we want to be having a conversation with God. So we want to be literally emptying our soul to God as our best friend, sharing with him all our questions, all our concerns, and not being afraid to just be utterly and completely laid bare in honesty with God in this prayer. And this can be an internal dialogue that you carry on throughout the day, and also as you drift off to sleep or in different times you set aside. People can, you know, even while working, you know, make certain intentions, set intentions to have this dialogue with God moving back and forth throughout their day, because we understand that our work and our other daily tasks are holy things. And so we don't neglect those things in order to practice. We learn that we include them in our practice. So the daily tasks that we have, whether we're taking care of children, whether we have a job, whether we are serving others, we recognize that is part of the practice. We don't exclude it. We don't say, well, no, I wish I didn't have to work all the time because it really interferes with my practice. That is a false view, because the jobs that we have serve creation. And we bring those jobs into our practice. Very important for people to understand. A lot of people in the beginning do have this misunderstanding. It's like, well, if I just had more time, if I didn't have to work, if I didn't have those kids, you know, making all that noise. But what we find is, no, it's the opposite. We embrace those vocations that God has given each of us as part of our practice. And we do this with prayerful fervor. And we remember that prayer is asking God. So when we are in prayer, we are going to be speaking to God. And we'll be reminded of this point later, but meditation, on the other hand, is going to be listening for God to respond. And so we want to give God both opportunities. We want to ask and we wish to receive. Just as Christ said, ask and you shall receive, and we trust and have faith in that because it has proven to be true. Then we want to focus on what are the areas in my life where I may be too attached to the things of the world, the actual hindrances to a more spiritual life, a more spiritual practice. And you're going to want to put forth the intention to detach from the things of the world that are a distraction and are a hindrance. That would be things like watching too much television, spending too much time on social media, doing things that serve a minimal or lesser purpose. Can be activities that we participate in, too much socializing, not enough socializing. It's all about these things that we are trying to bring into a greater balance. And that is what we want to do when we look at detaching from the things of the world. What does that mean? That means we are wanting to recognize that which holds us to the ground. Because we talked about this weight on the soul. And so.
And also that it's a prerequisite for us to even be here on this mortal realm is for us to have some of these fetters.
Yes, it is. We come into this world, we incarnate here because we have certain spiritual needs, things that we need to accomplish and work through. So, sometimes people will say, well, how will I know this or how will I know that? And I remind them, well, you can know a few things just by the fact that you are incarnate here. The very fact that you're incarnate here means that you have spiritual purification to undergo, that you have karmic elements from previous existences that need to be purified and refined, that you have spiritual progress that needs to be made in discernment, which is also known as discrimination, and discipline, which comes later in the path. But we do begin the out-of-body travel practices with some of that in play. We have to have this discipline that we're going to now consider bringing down into our spiritual daily life. And so this detachment from the things of the world is where we first begin to take that closer look at what are the things that are holding us down. Do I watch football all the time? And if so, it's okay to enjoy football, but is there a way to balance it? Or do I love reality TV or soap operas, and I just put all this energy, all these distractions? Am I attached to vanities? Sometimes this can be just, an endless taking care of the body, where it might just be vanities gone awry. Am I attached to the attention of the opposite sex? That's a very common one. Almost everyone I've ever spoken to, I think, has it. And has worked through.
One of the things that helps us too, as we've talked about, is what is behind these deadly sins, as they're called.
Right.
And so maybe it's that I care a lot about what people think about me. I want the neighbors to really think I'm great. Or if I have this much stuff, then people are really going to think I am super cool. Or I'll feel like, for me, like I wanted to be famous in my 20s. I want to be famous because I thought that people would then feel that I was important, or I would feel that I was important because other people would treat me a certain way. Right? So once we start to dig a little deeper into what is behind these outward things that we do.
And see, like what you were just talking about, that would be in the realm of the vanities. And that's something that many of us have worked through in different stages in our life. And that's where we're moving in through the examination of the conscience. And we do this through the use of the 7 deadly sins, which is envy, anger, sloth, avarice, gluttony, lust, and there is one missing there. Let me find it in here.
Yeah, I noticed one was missing there. I was like, what is that other one? It's probably the one I have the most of.
Yeah, so it's what I've got here in the book is pride, envy, anger, sloth, avarice, gluttony, and lust.
Pride.
Pride was missing. And isn't that funny? Because that is the one that does go before all falls. And so you don't want to forget that one. That literally is that, pride. One of the reasons St. Paul spoke about that and why it was so important in terms of recognizing pride for what it is because it really does instigate almost every action that pulls us away from God. There's an instigation from pride. And what is pride? Pride is, and here we are talking with what you just said, which is very right in line with this. Pride is wanting to set ourselves apart, make ourselves different than everyone else. And you know what happens in out-of-body travel is you realize we are so much more alike than we could ever be different. We have the same vices, we have the same struggles, we all want the same things, we all crave after the same things. And here again, it's a reminder back to we're incarnate here because we're like that. So that's why we're here. So there is a certain peace and just peace when we recognize and know that we are not alone in this. Because one of the other things that I think is a false view that many people have, and I have really discovered this with spiritual counseling and with emails that I receive from people, is that we all think, well, no, I don't want to say it, but I struggled with lust, or I struggled with greed, or like I wanted to be famous, and but I don't want to say it because I'm embarrassed, and it's like, and then we find out everyone's saying, oh, me too. Oh, me too. And so there's a certain peace in understanding that we're not that different, and and that our sinfulness or our vices are really not that special. We're all fighting the same ones. And that's how we can remind ourselves, especially when we're going through the purification and we get hit with correction and we do crash into the, oh my gosh, I suck. That's when we can remind ourselves, we're all doing the same things, the same purifications. There's nothing special about it in that relation. All of these little things that we have to root out, all of us have to root out. And it's not to say that people are not special, because they are, but it is helpful for us to know that in our struggle for purification, we are more alike than we are different. We are like by far. And so this similarity that we share is a blessing, because it allows us to recognize that we don't have to be so ashamed of the fact that we are human. We just have to recognize, oh, that's what it is. We're incarnate here because of these things. And so now we have a focus. Okay, and this focus is, okay, let me self-examine through, and I got to use this list in here because that one is missing one of them.
I want to say something real quick, because that's 7 deadly sins, right? But there's a lot of deadly sins. But it just occurred to me, we've spoken about like spiritual bank accounts before, but I was, and then you have like a column, you have the credits and the debits, and like, oh, look how much cash I have in my bank account or whatever. And then here's my debts that I owe. And so I was thinking of it the same way with the virtues and the deadly sins, is where we have 2 columns. And then in one column, it's like the things that don't serve us. And then there's the other one where maybe it's virtues where we're really good at. And so when it comes down to it, and as far as like eternal truth, we come here to this material world, and then we kind of look at the physical balance sheet, and we don't pay as much attention to the spiritual balance sheet. And that's the only one that we take with us. The other ones,
Absolutely.
everything stays. I don't take this hat with me. Nothing. This is my dad's hat, by
It's
the
a
way.
very neat hat, and I like it. And and because it was your dad's makes it even
Yeah,
cooler.
yeah.
So it's a great hat.
My dad just
But
passed
yes,
away,
you
and
won't get to take it with you, and so that's true. I mean, it's very important. You know, the only thing we take with us when we cross over is love, and we take ourselves in whatever condition that we are at the time of our death, and that's where compatibility in the next world is then determined.